They eat from it.
Hi, John. Good to see you.
Joyce is with.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. My name is Barb Kaba. I'm a fourth-generation family farmer from Adair County, who once ate in the old hotel. And I'm a proud member of Iowa CCI Action Fund Board Chair. As you may know, CCI Action is a statewide people power organization with members in all of 99 Iowa counties. Our group has people of all ages, all races, and all backgrounds. Our goal is to take corporate power in all its forms. Among other things, we fight for clean water, climate justice, racial justice, living wages, fair immigration policies, and health care for all. To make real change in everyday people's lives on these issues, we know that we have to change business as usual politics. We must do politics differently to make life more just and small d democratic for just folks like us. To that end, we have formed this committee to decide if there is a like-minded candidate who we should endorse in the gubernatorial race. And here's how our endorsement process works. First, we ask candidates, including you, to fill out a questionnaire. Now we have invited selected candidates that we selected from those questionnaire answers in for a screening meeting like this one. Next, we will be surveying our members to find out what issues they care about, and which candidates they prefer. Once we complete all three parts of the process, this committee will make an endorsement decision. Should the committee and the CCI Action Board decide to endorse, and we may not decide to endorse anybody, this will become more than just an endorsement on paper. We will put feet in the street. We will be knocking on doors. We will be making phone calls to get out the vote. And after the election, we will make sure that our candidate governs as they campaign. We have a number of prepared questions that will be asked by different members of the endorsement committee here. And we want to ask you to keep your answers to 3 minutes or less. Any questions?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, let's get started. And here's your first question. In 3 minutes or less, tell us who you are and why you are running for governor.
Well, I'm a fifth-generation family farm kid from southwest Iowa. My little brother's in my home place now. I'm a product of many of you. Iowa, rural Iowans or urban Iowans, but multi-generational. And I'm running for all the things you just said. That's how, it's like I'm hearing my own campaign philosophy and my own personal life story in those remarks you just said. I'm very familiar with ICCI. ICCI was a member of the Iowa Farm Unity Coalition when we fought for family farmers in the 1980s. And your activism, as well as many other organizations, helped us pass some legislation in the 80s that helped family farmers. Didn't help enough, didn't make the changes we need. Holistically, but we helped keep some people on the land. That's been my life. Is the same fight you're fighting. It's fighting corporate power. It's fighting controlment of our democracy by a few to benefit a few. It's why I worked for Tom Harkin since I was a kid. I consider myself a populist. Not like the populism we saw from this last election of division and hate and capitalizing on economic distress, but populism of lifting everyone up and giving everyone an opportunity. I think what's happened just in the last few weeks in Iowa has put us right where we got them right where we want them. If you follow the Apple giveaway,
Oh, yeah.
and it is bringing to a forefront what governing and this government is all about for Iowans to see. We now have just a glaring example of favoring a few while we've cut in funding for education, we've closed mental health facilities, the privatization of Medicaid being another prime example of giving away for a few and leaving so many behind. We've instead of zeroing funding for the Leopold Center, stop those handouts, we can double the funding for the Leopold Center. There are just so many examples we have now to present about what they've done. Now throw Toad on top of that. here's the kicker. Now you get the manufacturers saying, oh, but we don't want Toyota because they might force us to pay people more. Their greed is colliding right in front of Iowans. My objective in this campaign is to point that out. We've got to bring Iowans along. Last election was a glaring example of how we failed to communicate about everyone's economic opportunity, what that means, and all the things we care about as progressives. That's our task. That's why I started my campaign in rural Iowa. If we don't reconnect with rural Iowans about their economic future, and that this government's not working for them, we don't win statewide. That's what I want to do. Is run a winning campaign on a message that helps change the mindset of this state, not when you become governor. But the campaign is also a process to begin to get people to open their eyes and see what's happening. You tell me when 3 minutes is up, because I can talk forever sometimes.
One more.
Okay, thanks. That's why I started my campaign after I left the farm in Storm Lake. Because I wanted to talk about what it means to have a governor who has vision. And I stood in the shores of Storm Lake at Kings Point Resort, which is part of Governor Vilsack's Vision Iowa program. And what that did to help rejuvenate some rural communities. And even more importantly, Governor Ray's vision, that we're a welcoming state. And new Iowans are much about our future as fifth generation Iowans. And if we don't invest in those children, not just children, but their parents too, but in their future and their education and job training and recognizing their value to their communities and our state, then we are missing an opportunity to help them and help ourselves even more by contributing to their success and their future in this state. That was my message when I started this campaign. It'll be my message throughout this campaign because we have to get Iowans to see that and recognize that. That will give us the power to govern with a policy agenda that begins to turn this state around and make it work for people.
All right. On that note,
you kind of actually touched on some of what I was going to ask.
Who are you?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Pat Bowen, and I'm from Iowa City. And my question is, what values motivate you? Which I think you kind of touched on that, but maybe you could go a little bit deeper. And what is the core message of your campaign? I heard you say, which I appreciate, kind of attacking the Republicans for what they've done, especially with the tax giveaways. However, personally, I would like to see something more what we're going to do instead of attacking. So could you address?
Well, I couldn't agree more. We have to, people are angry, and they should be angry. But anger alone doesn't win this campaign. It doesn't move our state forward. So, I think we have to talk about economic opportunity for everyone. And there are several fundamental building blocks for that. As we know, a solid commitment to public education in this state is what I think has made Iowa strong in the past. It is our ticket to bring a successful state for everyone in the future. So just a strong commitment to public education and funding our schools adequately. They have different challenges today than they did when I went to Red Oak Community Schools growing up. We have to equip them with the resources and empower them to meet their own individual needs. Particularly as we see new populations come into the state, that's a huge challenges for our schools. We have to meet those challenges, enable them to meet those challenges. We have to make sure that all Iowans have access to health care, can receive health care, and it doesn't threaten their economic future. That's the insecurity, not just people who don't have health insurance, but people who do. The insecurity they have about losing it, we have to address that. Now, we have 70,000 Iowans that stand to lose their health care coverage under the ACA at the end of the year. We should be talking about a Medicaid opt-in. So that just like Ohio and Illinois, Indiana and Minnesota have done, create an opt-in so people do have that option. You create a competition in the marketplace, and you also make Iowans have access to a lot of the resources we're leaving on the table because we have not done this right. Reverse the privatization of Medicaid, so we're not trying to carve out profits out of the same pool of money that's supposed to be going to people who need it most. So reverse the privatization of Medicaid, expand Medicaid as an opt-in. So I think I said my remarks. I mean, I think I would definitely be a governor who advocated for a single-payer system federally. But we have to start with taking care of Iowans. Those are a couple pieces. Then the broader economic one is, how do we grow jobs here, and how do we attract businesses that want to move here. And that is, we want to attract the kind of businesses that are sustainable and want to grow with us. That they value public education, they value an environment that people want to live in, they value our commitment to healthcare in this state, they value the public good, and they value their responsibility to contribute to that public good. That's the kind of businesses we want to grow and bring to Iowa. Not the ones that are coming here for a 10-year tax abatement, are looking for the next state 10 years from now to move to. We'll give them next week. That's quality jobs. So it's fundamentally, I think, how you want to have a healthy state, both health-wise, both education-wise, both infrastructure-wise, to attract the businesses that are committed to the people who live here, and they invest in the people who live here, because we as a society invest in our people.
Nick?
Hello, my name is Nick Shute from Alden, Iowa. My question for you is, family farmers are being driven out of business, and small towns are dying. What's your vision for rural Iowa?
First of all, let me just say that well, nothing more than makes me sad to drive through rural Iowa today. And it is a large part of my motivation for running. We have got to attract and build businesses that pay a living wage in rural Iowa. I think renewable energy has great opportunity for us. We're doing well with wind. Solar, I think, presents a great opportunity for additional jobs throughout Iowa, and particularly in rural Iowa. Biofuels are all high-tech quality jobs that, with our community colleges and universities and even our secondary schools, can begin to pair people with jobs. We have to make sure that access to high-speed internet is available in every rural community. If we want people to stay there or move back there or move there, they have to be able to do business anywhere in the world, whether it be their own business or just transact business. It's essential, and we're dropping the ball on that front. I think we have some things we can do about that. We have to make sure that rural schools are exceptional. They're such an integral part of the health of a small community, and giving them the resources, the tools, stripping collective bargaining rights for teachers has put us way behind the curve on attracting teachers to come to Iowa, and particularly rural Iowa. If they actually go forward with changing IPERS, and believe me, reform is code for 401k, that'll even make it 5 times more difficult to get anyone to want to teach in rural Iowa. So rural schools, we have to also have healthcare facilities in rural Iowa and healthcare professionals. You can't attract them to rural Iowa now with this Medicaid privatization. It is strangling our rural healthcare, rural hospitals and providers, and no one's attracted to go to rural Iowa today. So those are some fundamental building blocks we have to talk about. I assume I'll get an ag question later because I want to talk about that as well. But the hope for rural communities are to make it the same as for the whole state. To recognize the importance for the state to play a role in enhancing the quality of life of everyone. Not everyone wants to live in rural Iowa. I'd like to. My wife's more of a city person, so we compromise, right? But I just feel that if we don't make a concerted effort at the state level and federal level to jumpstart economic opportunity in rural Iowa, the decline is going to continue, and it's going to erode the future of this entire state.
With the average age of a farmer being 57, 58 years old, what's your ideas to engage beginning farmers? This is, as you know, hard. With the price of land and the price of entry, particularly the price of land, it is nearly prohibitive for new farmers to get started. I would rather we shift our efforts to some non-traditional agriculture, because I think that you can start that at a smaller scale. Certainly having jobs available in those rural communities with healthcare makes it more possible for a young person or a young family to begin to work into farming. Certainly, I think all state and federal programs that support farmers should have 2 key components. One is trying to help the next generation get into farming, and also tie all of our farm benefits to conservation measures. That's back on the farming question, the broader farming question.
it's, I don't have I'm looking for answers on that, frankly, because it's so difficult for young people to get into farming. It's not just difficult. We don't have to address, I think, in rural Iowa, just the aging farming population, but the aging population in general, and particularly the aging population of small business owners. We also need to help them transition to the next generation. Just like as that retiring farmers fund, that small businesses too. So I think it's probably going to be easier on the small business front because you don't have near as much capital upfront investment.
Would you support a bill that would give a farmer credit for renting his land to a beginning farmer?
Absolutely. I would support. I hope to get my passion and my frustration on this. I'd support any good idea that helps get beginning farmers on the line. It does a couple things. One is it may be one of many things we have to do to buffer the consolidation. Because right now it's consolidation, going to a few. I was at a webinar in Dona last week, and the guy rents his land to a farmer who he estimated farms 50,000 acres. Now, there's no opportunity for a young farmer to get in that, except for working for some livable wages. And so anything we can do to begin to carve back up, if you will, this countryside is my hope, and would be looking for ideas to support him on that front.
Thank you.
Alexa.
Am I talking loud enough?
Yes.
Okay. Little louder.
I'm Alexa Rodriguez.
What was the first name?
Alexa.
Alexa.
Yeah, and I am a senior at Roosevelt High School. And as a person who will be looking into colleges and applying soon, hopefully, I was money and the debt that I will be facing will be determining the college that I go to, essentially. And so, in your questionnaire response, you mentioned that you were looking into options for both tuition-free 2-year and 4-year colleges. And I was hoping if you could tell me what concerns, what your concerns about tuition-free universities are, and why you might be hesitant to fight for tuition-free 4-year colleges.
I'm not hesitant to fight for it. We definitely need to increase our funding for post-secondary education in state research institutions and community colleges. If you look at our budget situation, we're not funding pre-K and K through 12 adequately. We've got a huge challenge with water quality to address. We've got a huge challenge with healthcare to address. That I think some of my responsibility as a candidate is not create false hope. It's outrageous that we're seeing a 40% increase in Regents institutions' tuition over the next 5 years in the state. I'm definitely empathetic to the fact that we are squeezing people out of being able to afford a college education. I would like to make sure that we are funding the Regents and the community colleges to a level they do not have to increase cost of tuition, and we can actually try to bring it down so we make college more affordable. I do believe that one of the other things I'm looking at is you do that, you try and start to bring down tuition to make it affordable, because so many jobs in Iowa, it's just difficult to envision owning a home and living a quality of life at the wage levels we have in Iowa right now, and paying off student loans. So I'd like to, at a minimum, freeze, break down tuition levels, and then do some form of, I haven't fully fleshed this out yet, some form of tax credit. We can give tax credits to Apple. We can get tax credits to college students. Over a period of years, if they stay and work in Iowa, it pays off those college loans. I think some people want to target those to hard-to-serve areas. At a minimum, we should do that. I'd like to make it for anyone who stays and works in Iowa, that you get tax credits over a period of 5 to 7 years. Your student loans are paid off. That helps make it affordable by stopping the rising tuition, funding it at a level we don't raise tuition. Work towards bringing it down, but you got to do that in conjunction with funding pre-K through 12 and funding Medicaid, funding environmental cleanup. I'm hesitant to say, yeah, I'm for free education, that people, the year after you get in office, expect it, you can't deliver it, and people then begin to lose faith in the government they voted in office. So we have to be honest about the utilization of our public resources.
Mr. Norris, my name's Jack. I live over in Clive. If elected, are you willing to co-govern with CCI Action and other people-powered groups? To us, that means having a meaningful seat at the table, having access. So we're in constant communication. You call us, we call you, and you answer the phone. Being consulted and having input on policy and issues where we are the experts.
Absolutely.
Okay, and so that would.
I've been trying to think of ways I want to send a signal that everyone is welcome in my governor's office. And a couple things I'm thinking about. One is not absolutely. Once you part of
some people
we
should
believe in
be
the same thing. I
welcome.
want your ideas. I want your input. I want your engagement on boards and commissions, on advising on policy, on helping turn our state around. I feel much more comfortable in a group like this than a bunch of corporate lobbyists telling me what they do. So maybe be clear about that. I also think we have drastically have to increase the transparency of government. Experimenting with ways to do that, but why not have a video cam in the governor's office? And whatever, you can log on whenever you want. You can see who's meeting with me and what they're asking for. I believe in open government. When I became chair of the utilities board, I remember the first critical case we had, and the staff briefed me on, now this is how we start the hearing, and then this is how we close it and go into closed session to discuss the issues. I said, what do you mean? Well, we need there'll be something that's confidential, some trade secrets that are confidential. It's our responsibility to not make that public. I get that, okay. But that was a ruse to be able to make our conversation a decision in private. And I said, no. We will not close our deliberative process unless it truly is for a reason that we are by law required to protect. And everyone got nervous. And after the first couple we did, staff got more understood, the other commissioners understood, and the people who watched what we did understood, because they actually got to listen to the deliberative process about how we restart a decision. That's not only good governing, it's accountable governing. So I don't want you to just have access to, I don't want to just invite you in to give me your ideas and thoughts and opinions, and feel free to do that. But I want to make that the essence of how it next.
So, I mean, that's great what you did in the past, but this is about the future,
Yeah.
right? So, like, what are some concrete 3 examples that you can give to us where we would work in co-governance?
When you call and ask to meet with anyone, you'll have a meeting. Okay. Other than that, I mean, if I know it's an issue that you have been engaged in, I'll certainly pick up the phone and call you. But I hope you don't, aren't hesitant to pick up the phone and call me.
Oh, we won't.
Not a problem. I went down to the vigil. We go Monday night.
Can we hold?
Yeah, please.
You still have 2 more examples
Well,
to say.
let's go in a second.
Okay, just make it brief.
Short
Schedule.
Sure.
Stories are important. Examples are important.
Thank you.
because we
When I
want
went
to
on the vigil the other night, I said, why wouldn't our governor be there?
Yeah.
I don't know what the third example is, because you have an open door. I want your input, I want your access, and you'll have it when you request it. And when I think of it, I'll call you. But I don't want you to think I'm always going to think of calling you, because I've been in that governor's office. It's a complicated job. So the main thing I want you to know is, if you want to have a meeting with me here, you'll have it. If you want to come meet there, you'll have it. If you've got policy positions you want me to take a look at, I'll read it. That's 3, I guess, if you're going to look at that.
That's great. I think that works.
Yeah, I mean, I hope there's no doubt in that. I mean, it's just letting people be part of their government. Yeah.
John, thank you for being here. My name is Tom Rendon. I'm a member of the CCI Action Fund. I live here in Des Moines. And do you believe that you have a realistic chance of winning the nomination?
Have the best chance.
You have the best. Okay. What is your plan to win?
My plan to win, as I mentioned, I feel we've lost focus and being in touch as a party with rural Iowa. So I placed a heavy rural emphasis in my campaign in connecting with rural Iowa about their future. And that is, as I mentioned in Storm Lake, it's getting folks to realize that it's about lifting everyone up and not division and tearing us apart. And that's a message I want to win the campaign with, as I mentioned, because that's the way I want to govern. It's also how we get people, I mean, even Main Street Republicans recognize the value of our new Iowans and how important they are. If we talk about economic future for Iowans, that they understand and know you care about them and have ideas that will help revitalize rural Iowa, then I think that's the first building block for Democrats to win statewide. I feel I'm establishing myself well as the candidate who understands rural Iowa and will fight for rural Iowa. That's
Well, sort of campaign rhetoric aside, I'm really thinking about strategies and a plan, because the Democrats were destroyed in 2016. So if you're going to turn that around, I would expect that there would be dramatically different strategies for how you're going to win.
I think they lost.
And what are they?
Yeah, they lost first of all message. They never conveyed who they were fighting for and what they were going to do to help people. The second thing, I don't want to get back in the negative here again, but we've got to point out that as I view this campaign, we're contesting for power against the special interest and corporate lobbyists who control government today. I think that resonates with Iowans. I think message and connection is important, okay? Organizationally, I've always believed that they may have money, we have the ultimate currency in politics, and that's people. We have to channel the anger and the activism that is present now and turn that into an electoral force. It's just, I mean, it's classic Wellstone
How do you do
organizing.
that?
It's classic Wellstone organizing. You have a policy agenda that people can identify with and want to get behind. You organize around that agenda so that people recognizing that the way they execute their support for that agenda is voting. We have far too many people who don't vote in this campaign because they see no hope in their future no matter who wins. So it's reconnecting with the people who've lost hope. Putting resources behind organization. We can organize more efficiently now than when I kind of grew up in my younger years in politics, where it was with the utilization of technology today and social media and the internet and the ability to connect and organize more efficiently and empower people to go talk to their voters and register voters in their precincts. We can do that much more efficiently now. So that I believe I can compete with candidates who may have more money or think they're going to win this by polling, figuring out what they should be talking about, and then crafting TV commercials that send that message that's going to get people to trigger and support them. We win this by mobilizing people, organizing precinct by precinct, registering voters, and turning people out to vote. It's just fundamental organizing. I think we've lost, you haven't, but the broader party has lost their commitment to organizing people over the last 20 years as we've shifted resources to all.
So when you think about those steps, which is going to be the heaviest lift for you? What's going to be the hardest thing in those things for you?
Well, the first hardest lift is raising the money to be able to fund an organization to do that. You know, no illusions I'm going to raise the most money in this race. You just have to have enough. You have to have enough to be able to use the tools and the staff and the resources to mobilize that. I did my announcement tour in July. Some people thought it might have been the best one of any candidate. We did 22 counties with 23 counties, with all volunteers and one staff person. I had great crowds, great execution, great press across the state, because we did it all with volunteers and people who are committed to change in the state. So it's having enough resources to leverage the volunteers who want to invest their time and energy into changing this state,
and giving them a platform and coaching and training to be able to do that. Thank you.
Now we have more involvement by the endorsement committee and some questions we came up with just before you got here. And we're going to start out with Susie.
Hello again.
Hi.
We here recognize that money in politics has been a problem long before Citizens United. And in your answers, you recognize that we have the best money government can buy, and you list two things that we might do at a state level. One is to have campaign donation limits, and the other is reining in lobbyists. I'd like you to be an advocate, if you would, for a third one, and that's campaign finance system like Voice, voter-owned Iowa Clean Elections. That's publicly financed campaign system.
I apologize. Did I not put support public funding for campaigns in my questionnaire?
No.
I should have. I've always been a support of that. I think we should. I don't know the Voice number details, but I've always thought we should have. This candidate gets a certain number of contributors at a certain level. I don't know what it is, $100, or $200, so that you have someone who can garner enough support that they are, legitimate's the wrong word. Well, I'm looking for a better one, okay? But I hope you understand what I mean. Someone who can garner enough support and enough to trigger a public financing mechanism, and that people will be required to abide by the rules for that public financing system.
I'm going to ask your campaign here to look at Bill 203, which is one that Pam Yoakum and Joe Bolcom had
I can tell you right
introduced.
now, Pam and Joe are behind it. I can't imagine I'm not.
And then and in the House here, 101 and 168. In addition, Seattle is doing something right now. It's a little different, but there are some really interesting ways to go about this, and I'd like to see a governor who would begin us on that path. Can I count on you?
It is. No, I think we're losing our democracy.
Yeah.
People have lost faith in government because they don't think their vote counts, because they think someone else is in control. And they're right.
They're right.
And money is the. When I approach a campaign, a little bit in your food, I think you've got three resources. You've got a candidate, which equates with time. You've got money, and every campaign needs some level of money. And you've got people. We have slowly, over the last 30 years, taken people largely out of the equation. Because more money has been available, because people realize they can capture politicians with large contributions to enable them to go on TV and sway the voters who vote. And as we've taken people out of the equation, people have lost their connection to being engaged and involved in their government, and their ability to get more people who aren't voting engaged and involved in their government. The key to getting that back is, one, a philosophy of how you campaign, by re-engaging people and investing resources in that, and two is to limit the influence of money.
So I can look forward to you supporting a public campaign finance system.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And not just supporting it, helping as the governor to go out and convince Iowans it's in their best interest.
Thank you.
Natalie.
Hi, I'm Natalie Snyders. I live here in Des Moines. I'm a CCI Action board member. I have kind of a two-part question for you about the minimum wage. First part is, in your questionnaire response, you stated that you believe wages should be raised to a level equal to 130% of federal poverty threshold for a family of four, 40-hour work week, which would bring the minimum wage up to $15.38.
37 or 38, something like that.
Yeah, that's a very specific number. We were wondering how you came up with that, number or where you got those numbers from? Have you talked to people in the movement about it? And the other part of my question is, there's been concerns raised in the fight for $15 an hour, the impacts on small businesses, especially in rural Iowa, people with a small staff like restaurants, people with a close wage margin. How would you address those concerns with people?
Thank you. The first one, right there. We have to. I wasn't against the fight for 15 and the slogan and the fight, but I think public policy decisions have to be grounded in a rationale. I'm sorry, I just think that way. But it's not just because I think that way. I think we need to talk to Iowans about why this makes sense. And at 130% level poverty, several public assistances kick in. Free and reduced lunch, Medicaid, there are a couple more. That if Iowans realize if people can't make a living off their wage, then they are subsidizing their standard of living with their tax dollars. Iowans are by nature, we're a bit of a conservative lot. A bit of an exception in this room. Okay? And I think we can get people on board with it if we go a little deeper than just fight for 15. We actually say, no, we should tie it to the federal poverty level wage at which public assistance kicks in, at which a family is then unable to support themselves, which is not below the dignity of someone who works 40 hours a week. And that also goes up over time if it's based in that principle, because the poverty level rate changes over time. So that's where I got there and how I want to make the argument to Iowans as to why this makes just good economic sense and good human dignity sense. Okay. Now, we have a legislature right now that you all know that's not anywhere in the cards. Unless we change the makeup, not just pick the governor's office, change the legislature. I think you probably be realistic as we change and get a more progressive legislature over the next cycle and 2 election cycles. I believe we can get closer to a pure minimum livable wage that's based on a formula. Until we do, you're probably looking at some carve-outs. Okay, to get something passed. It's not unlike most states who do this. I would rather not have any, but we should be prepared. So, for instance, I would like to see more effort in the junior and senior year of high school with children that aren't going on to college. We'd be more aggressive with the community colleges and businesses about helping them get internships and training so that they have a path forward out of high school to a good paying job. That might be an area, I'm just trying to give you some examples that might be an area where if they were in that kind of internship program and we were supporting it with training dollars to help give them a future to look forward to, that I could see that. That would be the type of stuff I'm telling you right now, to get this passed by the legislature, we need to address some of those. And I brought in a whole other idea of mine, which is to do more of that, to try and give kids in those latter years of secondary school something to look forward to and an opportunity to stay in their community, particularly rural communities. We need to do a better job of training them. So that would be an example. You might make an exception.
But what about the people that are, not everybody's going to take that path. So
right.
There's people that are already struggling.
No, that would be my preference is to make this hard and fast for everyone.
Okay.
That would be one example where I might offer, okay, if they're in this program as an internship, try and get them on a track to a local industry or business that can pay them a minimum wage or higher, hopefully. That might be it. I think things like that we have to be realistic about trying to get something passed. I say that in this room. I'd rather start with just that's what everyone should get.
Okay. So about the second half of my question.
I'm sorry, help me out. Second half.
It was about the concerns raised by small business people about how the $15 an hour minimum wage might impact, say, like a restaurant in rural Iowa. How would you address those concerns with people?
I would address it by saying you're in the restaurant business, about 30-35% of your food, of your price of your products represent labor costs. About 15-20% of that represents management costs. About 10-15% represents hourly wages for your workers. So if they tell me that they're going to raise the price of a hamburger, I said, we're going to raise it about from like $4 to $4.25 an hour. That'll cover the cost of those increased wages. Not only that, all your competitors are doing the same thing. So it doesn't put you at economic disadvantage. It actually enhances your economic opportunity because the people who aren't coming to your restaurant now because they can't afford it will be able to because they're making a living wage. That's how I would address it.
All right, thank you. The next question comes from Patty.
Hi, I'm Patty McKee from Des Moines. In the questionnaire that you sent back, you just briefly answered about the repeal of stand your ground and it ended up it didn't pass. It was the immigration bill that would have required local law enforcement to work with ICE. And so I would like to expand on that a bit, and I have kind of a two-part question. Because I think part of the background with these is that there was support in rural Iowa for this, and not only there, but in other parts, but that was, I think, a large part of the support. And so how will you in your campaign and administration listen to and work with people of color, immigrants and refugees in dealing with issues they face, and also when laws like that come up in the legislature, there's legislation that comes up that affects them, how will you work with them?
First of all, any laws that come up that are discriminatory or targeted in nature won't get past my desk. I forget, is it Lillian? I should remember this because I was the only candidate that spoke out on the woman who's been separated from her child.
Liliana?
Yeah. I want to ask you about that status on that because no one's talked about it for like 2 weeks. Is that?
I personally don't know. I don't
Does
know.
anyone know?
I just know that the last attempt to get her reunited with the kid, it went up to Omaha. She was transferred back to Marshalltown, and that's where it hasn't moved from that.
What? I'm going to give you my card. If
Okay.
you're tracking that, keep me up there because I did speak out on that. I think that's what the governor I'd be, was speak out and stick up for people.
Yeah.
The people who need us most stick up, which is why I started my campaign in areas of the state where we're talking about new Iowans. Letting the feds come in and take over local law enforcement, I'll fight all the way. Anything that has an agenda to try to make it more difficult for new Iowans to be successful or to make it more difficult for them to stay here, I'll fight.
Okay, but going back to how will you work specifically with those communities, people of color and immigrants and refugees? What is your connection to them?
My connection, well,
Listening
the most recent
to
connection
them
is
and-
my business, State Public Policy Group, is the one that just did the Blackpool County study. I don't know if you followed that.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, that was my business that did that study. We did 247, 74, I can't remember, small group and individual conversations with African American refugees and African Americans in Polk County to study their lack of economic opportunity and the barriers and obstacles they had to economic success in Polk County. That's one example, which is, I think, the Des Moines Register ran a very good editorial on it just a week or two ago that cited the study that my business did. I talk to people. I mean, what brought my attention and brought home the Storm Lake situation, even though I've been aware of it for years, is just my sitting down with a Deep Pompasay, a teacher at Central in Des Moines, and listening to his story. How his family moved to Alta when he was 7, and he, felt racism, bricks thrown through their window. But it was the church ladies of Alta that realized that he was his brother and sister were going to succeed in Iowa. They had to learn the English language, and they embraced them
and they helped them, and they all are advanced degrees and very successful today because the investment that Iowans, welcoming Iowans, gave them. It's staying connected with people and going out and listening to their stories, understanding them, what they're facing, and what then we can do as government policy, not just government policy, but also the administration of government, to identify those people most in need of assistance. That's where we target our resources. So, trying to think of another example, I think the study we did on Polk County was a big success, and that's because it's the kind of work I like to do.
Okay. I have one other part to that. What specifically will you do to help Iowans become more welcoming? Because I think that we've seen, like with the Trump winning a lot of rural Iowa, that there is some sentiment out there that it's really against people of color and immigrants and refugees. And what would your administration do to work to make Iowa more welcoming?
A couple examples. Again, the reason I went to Storm Lake. A governor who walk into a community and embrace people of color, both physically and policy-wise, to show that we are a welcoming state and everyone is a part of our future. Funding education, funding ESL at a level that isn't seen today as, so my kid's not getting a good education because you're shifting resources over to ESL, or you're not giving enough ESL resources to really make it work, but we're forcing schools to make these choices. We need at least 5 years of ESL language training to make a new language learner successful. And that's not just K through 12, we need to do it on the adult side as well. We need to make this state about helping our new Iowans be successful and committing the resources to do that. Raising wages, because we know that many new Iowans starting out at the bottom of the economic ladder. Half of our babies in the state are born eligible for Medicaid. Half of our children get free and reduced lunch. I can guarantee none of their parents are setting aside college savings. So you got half the kids in the state have no economic dream of going to college because their parents are just barely getting by. So we've got to raise wages. We've got to fund education at a level that gets them the ESL training they need to be successful. And then you start to peel away. If you got livable wages, they won't need Medicaid, but we need to have obviously a federal program, but a health care that's available to Iowans. We remove that economic insecurity. I think a lot of the things that our new Iowans face are also what poor Iowans face, with the exception of the focusing on the language opportunity and training. But the rest are all mostly economic. And being a governor, like I said, that actually walks into the community and talks to them and embraces them and help Iowans realize that they are not creating your problem, which is what happened last November. It's the politics of division and hate and blame. I mean, it was really essentially, if you didn't look like them or you didn't look like me, talk like me, or even if you got a government benefit as a government worker or a teacher, that you were causing me my economic problem.
And then we're going to move on to Kim now, in the interest of time.
Yes, sorry.
Hi, my name is Ken Bowen. I live in Iowa City. I'm on the board of directors for Iowa CCI Action Fund. And my question for you is regarding the legislature's overturning the right to collective bargaining for public employees. What is your plan to restore the right to collective bargaining for public employees?
Win the governorship, win enough state legislative seats that we can reverse it. That's the technical way to do it, right? We have to. No one was asking for it, except the Koch brothers and the Alec gang. So, on most issues, I'd say we have to turn public opinion around to get them to support it. I think this is an example where I don't even think we have to.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. When you said get them to support it, who is them?
No, people.
Okay,
I
thank
mean,
you.
here's the deal.
Just clarification.
No, you would think if the legislature passed something, it because it's in the best interest of Iowans, and Iowans generally support it. So I'm talking it's an art.
Sorry. I know better.
That ain't true. If you listen to your high school government teacher, that's the way with them.
Yeah, right.
So, but now this is a good example. But there wasn't even a. I mean, nowhere on Main Street in Iowa or anywhere in back streets of Iowa where there are people saying, "Oh, this is a big problem. We've got to strip away the teachers and government workers' rights to bargain for wages and benefits." So I don't think there's a mindset necessarily you have to change. Actually, we have to engage those folks who took it for granted. The 40% of maybe ASK members who voted for Donald Trump, or whatever the percentage was, and organized labor, we've got to re-engage those folks and get them to realize their vote matters and who they vote for matters, and stop getting caught up in this identity politics and these issues they're capitalizing on driving wedges like racism, and vote for economic future. We do that, we'll start winning back seats in the legislature. We reconnect with rural Iowa, which we have to win the legislature back. We'll start winning seats back in the legislature, and we can roll back the collective bargaining law. So I want to give you a passion plea about how wrong, we all know how wrong it was. It's devastating. It's devastating to quality of life and livable wages in the state, because instead of helping raise people up, we've actually brought people down. And we've got people who think, that voted last November, like I said, back to that division, and hey, you don't have something, and you're creating my economic stress, so let's bring you down. No, let's lift everyone up. And so I sometimes go past the passion and anger. I get they took it away, but we really have to focus on reconnecting with Iowans about lifting everyone up and everyone's economic future. We will win back the legislature, and we can roll this thing back.
All right. We don't have time to.
I'm sorry. Got me afterwards.
Yeah, right to work.
Oh, right to work?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, our economic future, the quality of life in this country has been because we've given people the right to organize and the right to have union labor. And that's lifted up so many people. That's in our society. We wouldn't have Social Security and Medicare if it weren't. I mean, it's so whatever we can do to empower people to organize and negotiate, just like a CEO negotiates for his or her wages, all workers should have that right.
Thank you.
And Larry.
Oh, we got
Sheree.
No,
Oh, wait,
Oh,
Barbara.
sorry, Sheree. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Hi, John. My name is Sheree Warkis, and I live here in Des Moines. I'm a retired public school teacher. And this last legislative session, I was a member of the Iowa CCI Water Leadership Team, and we battled against the bill to dismantle Des Moines Waterworks, which we knew was retribution for the lawsuit followed by Des Moines Waterworks against the drainage districts north of us. And, we anticipate and we know that protecting independent water utilities is going to continue to be an issue, not just in Des Moines, but across the state of Iowa. During the public hearing that we demanded, and we got a lot of help from Rob Hogue and some other legislators, but during that public comment period, we had other water utilities from the state of Iowa come up, and they were adamantly opposed to it because they also felt very threatened by this bad bill. And so my question is, what is your perspective on the attempt to dismantle an independent water utility like Des Moines Waterworks and hand control over to members of a city council in the region, essentially is what it was about?
Right. I shared your position on it. It was against it. Saw it just as retribution. Again, it's back to the question we just had here. There was no public outcry for that. There was no policy rationale for it. There was just political retribution rationale for it. And it was wrong and bad policy. You saw it throughout this session.
take away counties' rights to set higher minimum wage, take away counties' rights for CAFO standards, take away, force a different governance on their water on them. Local governments are the incubators for progressive ideas, and that's why they're squashing. Every time one pops up, squash it down. You saw this past session, and the water is just another prime example of that.
All right. Now Larry.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed in your answers for agriculture because they never mentioned family farms. And you never mentioned that they were in a cost price squeeze. And you need to bring the connection to a fair price to all the things that you're hoping for the state. That's not even being discussed anymore. It wasn't discussed by the Democrats or the Republicans in any of the campaigns last year or 2 years ago, whatever. So would you support a price floor for cash grains? Would you support supply management? Would you support a grain reserve? Would you support stopping partnership ownership of livestock? And would you have a moratorium on CAFOs? In other words, I'm talking about a progressive foundation economics that we seem to forget about. And we're not going to get anywhere until we understand that $3 corn and $8 beans is not going to pay $15 an hour wages. It's not going to create good paying jobs. So how do you feel about that? I know that you can't personally, it's a federal policy, but can you at least say farmers are in a cost price squeeze? They need a fair price. That's basic, fundamental, progressive foundation economics.
I apologize, because I did see those are all federally driven programs. So, so it is what got me involved in politics.
I know.
And it's guided me my whole life. My dad was an early organizer for NFL and collective bargaining for farmers. I don't know how many nights I saw farmers around our kitchen table trying to organize and fight for collective bargaining for farmers. I think I get to a question like that and I get depressed. Because so much of it's driven by federal farm policy that's put us in this situation. And if I had a magic bullet for getting farmers to organize in collective bargaining, I would do it in a heartbeat. Absolutely farmers on price squeeze. We've got this bigger and bigger is better mentality for decades. You know, they're fighting this your whole life. How do we get fair prices for farmers? And I'm open to anything with that. But I'm also, this isn't hedging on that. Absolutely. Everything you said. But I also want some ideas about how do we stop this consolidation.
I'm writing it down.
How do we stop? Good, thanks, so yes, absolutely getting fair prices for farmers. The term I'll use is just skipping my brain.
Cost price squeeze.
Cost price squeeze. Thank you. Absolutely, absolutely. And so when I talk about federal farm policy, I mean, I think it has driven us in this direction. The unlimited subsidies. I was a governor, I would advocate that farm programs and payments be tied to make certain levels of conservation. That we make it harder for people to tear out fence rows and tear out waterways and not farm responsibly. There's just probably nothing I would like to address more for the state's future than stopping consolidation and making it profitable for family farmers to be able to live on the land and farm it.
You understand, though, it's the subsidy idea that keeps the price down.
I know.
And that way, the big agriculture.
We've been fed this bill of goods forever. We've got to feed the world.
But all I'm talking about is the idea of subsidy is a red herring. Subsidies are what has caused the problem.
Right, they keep
the price down, and so they pay the farmer a little handout. And then the big boys get the grain cheap.
Absolutely.
And then everybody out
The
of
grain
business.
traders and the shippers and the big guys, all these farm programs are designed for their benefit, not for farmers.
Yes.
And getting a fair price is the fundamental change that needs to occur.
The USDA prints out the parity formula.
Yeah.
That is a wound, and that's like rubbing salt into my wounds.
Well, if there's
And
any
why don't we talk
consolation,
about
Charles
that?
Walters Jr. is unforgiven is at my bedside table. Ray Reddick's my father passed away this past January. And that's my fundamental belief and understanding for ag policy. It is very pricing, and the institutions, large shippers, large agribusiness have always been about driving down those prices. Substituting, let me share one story, which is kind of telling. I want to share it with you. I apologize. When I was in the United Nations, and I sat on the Committee for Surplus Commodity Disposal of the U.S. And I was given instructions to close it down because it hadn't met in 5 years. And I can't argue that it wasn't functioning. That most of that grain dumping was now over in the WTO, so it wasn't in the UN anyway. But I sat there with Southeast Asian and African developing countries. And even though it hadn't met in 5 years, they were staffing it and didn't need to, there was no way they were going to let that committee shut down. Because they are still met. They've been dumping cheap grain on their market under the auspices of feeding the world. It undermines their own farmers to be able to farm the land and feed their own people. And that just brought it home to me, to see their faces in that room and see how we really are affecting their lives. It's the fish's story, right?
Yeah.
Teach them, give them a fish.
We're not making any money
They'll
selling
always
our
be
corn
that.
at
Teach
$3 a
them,
bushel.
teach them how to fish.
We're dumping our grains.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, sorry.
And on that very good question and answer, we're going to try to stay on time here and conclude. But I have one more question for you. In 1 or 2 sentences, why do you want our
No, it's hard for me, don't you?
Yeah. There's your challenge.
Been around since 74? 74?
74.
You'll never have a governor since you've been in existence who has been more with you on your mission and what you're trying to achieve than I would. I got in this involvement in government and politics for exactly the same reasons nearly 40 years ago that I am today. And the same reasons you are. I think I also have an opportunity to win. The best opportunity. Because I actually think I understand the struggles people go through. I wasn't raised in a development. My dad died last January. We sold his house for $10,000 and split it up for the kids' college. We lived on social security. My grandparents were school bus drivers and optical nurse. They got by and they all needed Medicaid. The government that works for the people is what I'm for. The folks who are getting the handouts now are not the ones who need the help. And I'll fight every day for what you're fighting. And I think because I understand that, that's why I'll win.
Thank you so much.